Rounding out our four-pack of modules here on configuring Windows network services, we have the last and final of the role services associated with your remote access role to discuss. Here we'll talk about direct access, which is a mechanism to allow your external clients more or less unrestricted access, if you so choose, to all the internal resources that exist inside your LAN. Direct access is termed an always-on VPN connection. What it provides is the ability for a user, no matter where they may be, to connect to your internal resources just like they were on the local area network. Now, this is obviously a really cool thing because a user in a hotel or an airport or a coffee shop somewhere can do the // computer name and access file shares. Their applications can connect up with your application servers with no additional configuration. And in fact, it's the zero configuration portion of direct access that makes it so potentially useful as a mechanism to connect in those external clients. However, as should be obvious, anytime you're connecting those clients in an always-on way, there are just a couple of things you have to really think about before you ever turn on a service like this. And so here in this module, we'll talk about the implementation of what Microsoft terms the simplified deployment scenario for direct access. But before we get into the click-by-click, I think it's worthwhile for us to just spend a little bit of time talking about some of the prerequisite requirements that you would want to lay in place before you would ever turn this thing on. I will admit, we'll do things a little bit differently here in this module because I want to do just a little bit of death by PowerPoint here, really 3 slides, that give you a 20,000-foot perspective of the server requirements for direct access. So what kinds of servers will you need? Where will you need to position them? What kinds of network cards do they require? And also, what kinds of public IP addresses are you going to need to have? Anytime we're dealing with a VPN of any form, we have to think about the outside versus the inside, as well as the name resolution in both of those locations. So here for direct access, we also have some DNS entries that we have to worry about as well. Direct access and the functionality of direct access also requires some additional DNS thinking that you have to lay into place before you turn the thing on. So we'll talk just a minute about some of those DNS records and resolution that is also required. And then we also have to have a way, obviously, of authenticating those people and authenticating the services to each other. Direct Access's old versions required some pretty heady certificate requirements. However, in this version, we can simplify things down, if you so choose, to require a certificate on the Direct Access server itself. And so in this simple scenario, the simplified deployment scenario, as Microsoft terms it, one of the only things you really need to know is the fact that a publicly trusted third-party certificate is perhaps the best way to go. So we'll talk a bit about the certificates for direct access, but the main gist here is that third-party certificate is perhaps a great investment for you if you decide to turn on direct access in your production environment. With that 3 slides of Death by PowerPoint then out of the way, we'll then spend some time actually configuring direct access. Now, the implementation of DA is one of those things that could be extremely complicated if you start digging into the individual protocols and the ways in which direct access rides over IPv6. But for the purposes of our 7411 exam, Microsoft, I believe, is interested in you being aware at the 20,000-foot perspective of how all the different pieces interrelate. So we'll go through the click-by-click implementation from start to finish of that simplified deployment scenario so that you could really surprisingly easily turn on direct access in a small environment with just a couple of clicks. We will, as part of that implementation, also talk about the client configuration for direct access. Now, I introduced just a second ago the idea that direct access is kind of a zero effort or zero configuration technology on the part of the users. And that's really a good thing. In a world where you've got users that can connect up at any point and from anywhere, you controlling every bit of that configuration is something you probably want to do. Well, with direct access, the client configuration is greatly simplified because DA itself and the wizard will create a series of group policy objects that will do all the configuration for you if you just know where they're at and where to apply them. So we'll talk about the client configuration and the steps you'll have to go through in order to get those clients properly configured and secured to connect into those internal resources.